I grew up in the neighborhood to where I saw black men loving and respecting one another. I grew up in a community to where I saw beautiful, natural black women loving and respecting one another. They would carry themselves like ladies. The way that I was raised up, you couldn't even whistle at a woman. Because when I was coming up, we were taught that women are not dogs. They're not animals. So it's offensive to whistle at women. I used to walk down the street with my uncles, and I used to see the way that my uncles and black men who were even strangers to my uncles, how they would show love and support and honor to one another. I saw this with my own two eyes. And as time goes on, you see things change. You see people in your community who you looked up to and loved like big brothers get strung out on drugs and alcohol. To the degree they don't even recognize you anymore. They don't recognize you anymore. And as time goes on, you hear this person passed away, that person passed away. You look out the window, you see the younger generation get strung out on drugs. You see your little brother walking down the street with a long trench coat on, and he's strung out. He's walking down the street and he's talking to himself. And this is someone who you knew coming up. This is someone who you knew and you loved every single day of their lives. However, you see, as the elders pass away, and that puts people who are strung out on drugs in a more dangerous position, because the elders have passed on, and therefore compassion has passed on. And those who are left in the community who have compromised their own compassion towards these people, instead of reaching out to help them get their lives together, now they're mocking them. They mock them. And they stand by and they laugh at them. They mock them until they're no longer able to do anything because they're dead. And now all of a sudden you want to come to their funerals. You want to shed tears for them when you could have kept them out of that casket. But what we're looking at today is pretty much the same thing. It's just in a whole nother different insidious form. And as you see things change, it's because of the change in the people that you know, which gives you an indication that things in life are changing. And as you're standing on the outside, simply because you've never conformed to a whole lot of the different vices in the world, because your attention and your interests have always been in other directions, including certain directions that you were even made fun of and mocked of. You come out on the end of where you're safe and you're sane and you're at peace. Peace. You're at peace. And your only disturbance is seeing those around you diminish into a state of degeneracy. And then as time goes on, you listen to the dialogue of a whole lot of so-called black leaders, and they speak on these things. They speak on these things. And simply because you can identify with them because of the color of your skin, you start feeling this sense of dread within yourself because you've been conditioned to think that you belong to everything that this so-called black leader is speaking of, when you have lived the majority, if not your entire life, on the outside of what has been constantly destroying everyone around you. And suddenly you forget, or you are made to forget, that you were created as an individual human being. And if it's one thing that helps you remind yourself of that, is the treatment that your so-called community gives you, because you're so different than everybody. You're not walking around smoking joints. You're not walking around drinking beer. You're not walking around gang banging. You're not doing none of those things. And so you're pushed on the outside of those things. And so this anger and resentment comes up inside of you because you don't understand. How is it that I'm losing my friends? Why am I being rejected? Why are certain people who are coming into the community separate me from the friends that I thought were close to me, when if someone can just come into the community and separate you from people in whom you thought you were close to, it reveals that you were really never close to these people in the first place. You have always been alone. So it goes back to one basic principle. You are an individual, regardless of your surroundings, regardless of your physical likeness towards everyone that are in your midst. You're on your own. And what's blessing about that, once you come to realize that, it pinches a little bit. But once you come to accept it, because of the wisdom that the Creator imbues within inside of you, you become at peace with it. And you begin to see the benefits of being an individual outside of what is destroying this community of people who fell for the propaganda that they are supposed to be a member of this certain community that is slowly destroying themselves. That's the bandwagon that you were supposed to have jumped on. And simply because you refuse, you're an outcast. That's fine. I would rather be an outcast than to be a part of degeneracy. I would rather be an outcast, because I see the results of being outcasted. I see the results of being the black sheep of the family. I see the results of it, and I'm at peace with it. the video before this one, it's from my personal videos. I make a whole lot of personal videos strictly for myself, as well as some of the writings that I write are strictly for me, myself. And it reveals a man who is always on the journey of self-examination, considering having to raise myself intellectually as well as spiritually, which used to trouble me. But considering the results of the journey thus far, I really don't have any more complaints. Because I feel as though I've done pretty well without having any type of moral instruction from I would say close family members like my parents, or considering, as I was saying not too long ago in another one of my videos, being raised up inside of a household with a bunch of us who were nothing more or less the subjects of failed marriages, when we were all pretty much raised in the presence of my great-grandmother. And even though it was all of us in the home, and we were surrounded by what would be considered common families, with two parents at home and children and everyone, we were considered indifferent, or because my great-grandmother, she carried the last name Kelly, in which she got from my great-grandfather, who immigrated from Ireland in 1926 to Chicago, who was the third generation of slaves who were brought from Africa to Ireland, and they were slaves under a family with the surname Kelly. And through their correspondence with the Kelly family, I guess everyone fell in love. And so it wasn't considered what you would call over here in America common slavery. So I don't know the African name in which rooted on my great-grandfather's people, so I'm not aware of that. But the surname Kelly came from an Irish family who had Sir James Kelly's family as slaves. And as time went on, as I said before, everyone fell in love with each other, and the African family became a part of the Kelly family. And from the information that I obtained, the whole slavery act and demeanor between the Africans and the Kelly family wasn't there anymore. And so everyone became a functioning family thing. And so he immigrated to America. My great-grandfather, who was the third generation from slavery, in 1922, and he bought some land in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, which is an area that is called Chatham Village. And he ventured down to Little Rock, Arkansas, of where he met my great-grandmother, Rebecca, Um, I'm not. I think my great grandmother's last name at the time was Hall. I believe so. I could be wrong. But they met. They got married. Their house was built in Chicago on the south side. And so they only had one child, and that was my grandfather, James Kelly Jr. And so James Kelly Jr. had met my grandmother on my mother's side, and her name was Murtis Harper, and she came out of Atlanta, Georgia. So that produced my mother. And so Murtis, who was my grandmother, whom I never had a chance to meet, she had caught tuberculosis, and she had passed away in 1949, not too long after she gave birth to my mother. My mother was but, I believe, 7.5 years old when her mother died. You hear the language, her mother. And you know, that's why I always say, I tell a lot of people to make certain that your children meet everyone in their family who has a very huge importance to them. Now, there was no way that I was going to be able to come in contact with meeting my grandmother on my mother's side because I wasn't born yet. My mother was but seven years old, so that was impossible. But my grandfather, after my grandmother had passed, before so they had got a divorce, and my grandmother, she had remarried, and I believe they were together for about 6 months, and then my grandmother passed away from tuberculosis because she used to smoke a whole lot. But for some reason, my granddad did not want my mother to remain with her mother's people in Atlanta, Georgia, and so he went to Atlanta and he brought my mother back to Chicago, and she was raised by my great grandmother. So after that, my grandfather, he met this very beautiful Black and Asian, very funny woman named Odessa. I loved Odessa. Odessa she was so sweet, and she was full of life. She was full of life. And but as most would say, Odessa, I wouldn't say Odessa was for the streets, but Odessa was the type of woman to where no one was going to tell her what to do. And so her and my grandfather produced six children. My 3 uncles and my 3 aunts. And so when that marriage didn't work out, everyone, the 6 children, were brought to the same household, which was my great grandmother. And then when my mother married my father, and it produced me and my older sister Becky, that didn't work out, and so we ended up in the same home. So this is one of the reasons why I said I was surrounded by a bunch of relatives that were the subjects of failed marriages. So I wanted to explain that, because there was some people a while back who asked me to explain that, but I didn't get around to explaining that a little bit more objectively, for them to understand exactly what I meant by that. So I apologize for that. If when I did explain it previously, I obviously didn't explain it objectively so that more people could understand exactly what I meant by that. So in having to explain all of that, coming up in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, as time went on, I'm going to move this a little faster because it has everything to do with my personal video before this. You look around and you see all of the vices that are starting to tear down the moral standards in which a whole lot of us in the on the south side, which is called Chatham Village, were raised of. And through my observation, what I noticed, the tools and devices that were out in the environment in which helped produce the moral decay, all of these things were made attractive, like the drinking, the smoking, and then it extended from the regular cigarettes to the weed smoking, and then from smoking weed, then it went to cocaine, and from cocaine it went to meth, and it just kept getting worse. And so a lot of people started compromising their moral standards, and some people were resolved by way of the elders that were still living in the community. And what I noticed is that once the elders started getting too old and they started to be unfortunately more concerned of their physical health, that's when the community started feeling the moral decay of the drug use, the drinking, and everything else that I mentioned previously, as well as the clubs, and then the disco scene comes in, and the music of the disco era mostly focused on partying, sex, drugs, and everything. And therefore, when they went into the disco clubs, if you would talk to other elders, and if you would observe the movie Saturday Night Fever with Brother John Travolta, you would see that when you go into the disco clubs, you had the neon lights and everything. It was a big dance floor. They had the bars over here, and you had discos, and you had those smaller areas that they used to put up in the community called taverns. Is when those people who would rather have a little bit more privacy, and those people who they would normally see pretty much every night, they would go to these little bars in the community called taverns, and was owned by a whole lot of people who were struggling to become entrepreneurs. And so you had people getting themselves addicted to alcohol and drugs and everything. And so as you see that the elders begin to pass away, a whole lot of the moral principles in which they taught those older people who were around you to be examples, you come to realize that those moral principles that was taught to people like your mother and all of those, that particular generation died inside of them. And so they started using drugs and everything. So that left the community pretty much extremely vulnerable to whatever vices that was filtering the community. And due to the fact that you had less people exercising their moral principles that were taught to them by the elders, that gave more power to the moral decay in which was developing inside of the community. And from that point on, you start seeing alcoholism and drug abuse filter into your particular generation through your friends that you grew up with and everything. But the majority of the time, a lot of people ask me, well, how is it that you saw all of these things and you noticed all of these things and the effects of them and you didn't get caught up in them? Well, I'm not going to respond to that as if I'm asserting that anyone is ignorant or stupid. I would just respond in saying that the person who was observing these things, the person who is noticing a change in the environment, the person who is noticing that the change is a moral decay and is starting to affect people to the degree you don't even recognize people anymore. You walk past, there was a brother out there that I knew named Emmett. I recall one time I went downtown to see Enter the Dragon. And so in the Chicago theater, no, it was the United Artists Theater in Chicago, which doesn't exist out there anymore. The United Artists used to have two movies playing, and of course they would leave the last movie, the one that you primarily wanted to see, they would show that one secondary. So I particularly came to see Enter the Dragon. The first movie was Three the Hard Way, where it had brother Jim Kelly, who was in Enter the Dragon, Fred Williams, and brother Jim Brown. So I sat through that. And so when that movie went off, they give you 15 minutes to 20 minutes to go get food or go use the restroom. So I'm going downstairs in the theater to use the restroom. I see Emmett standing outside the door of the restroom, and he was telling people that he was selling acid. He's like, I got acid for you, and everything. And I stopped and I looked at Emmett, and he looked at me, and he just went back on what he was doing. And so I went in and I used the restroom. And as I was leaving the restroom, Emmett was just standing there. And as I was walking out, I took 2 stairs while I was going up, and I looked back at Emmett, and Emmett was just, he didn't even look at me or anything. And I'm like, wow. So I noticed that with brother Emmett. I noticed that with a whole lot of people around me started first experimenting with drinking and drugs, and then they became consumed with it which is addiction. And so when you're dealing with a person who is observing these things, and if he can recognize that these substances will cause a moral decay in you due to the fact that you were raised up, and not only raised up, but you have a natural instinct in you to know what is right and what is wrong, that is based upon self-love. Because when you determine what is right and what is wrong, that is based upon self-love, because your determination of what is right and what is wrong is based upon what you feel would be right for you or wrong for you. And so with that being said, there was a person who was observing these things. There is no way that a person who is observing these things can ever get caught up in the vices that are destroying the community. And if he can perceive that these things are not right, and if he loves himself, and if he is at peace with who and what he is, even though at that time I was still learning of myself, I still understood what would make me a worse person if I did it. And I knew that if I did not do those things on my journey to learning of myself to become a better person, that would be a lot more beneficial for me. And so that's when I got into martial arts by way of the inspiration of Bruce Lee. I started studying his philosophy. I started studying a whole lot of areas of living, not only by way of books, but just clear observation. And what I've noticed, as I said before, everything that is bringing down a lot of communities back in those days, and even to this day, these things are made very attractive, especially through the propaganda of the people who are going around and saying, man, I want to smoke weed, I'm gonna go home and drink, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. You know, when you hear those things affect you the same way as if the propaganda machine would try to influence you to go in certain directions. But I decided what was best for me, and so I never went in those directions. So, but due to the fact that we were all living in that one house, and we was a different type of household. We were called the Kelly clan. We was called the Kelly clan instead of the Kelly family. However, even though we was mocked as the Kelly clan, the only vice that was going on in our particular home was my Uncle Kevin getting consumed by alcohol. He became an alcoholic at a very early age. And my Uncle Kevin not too long ago passed away with health issues because of his past abuse of alcoholism. However, even though we were called the Kelly clan, everyone else who mocked us ended up being a part of the moral decay, in which I said became attractive to a whole lot of people, because everyone wanted to be a part of a certain social group of people, whether it was drinking, drugs, going out, which involved drinking and drugs. I mean, a lot of people compromised. a lot of people compromised, and a whole lot of people met their deaths that way. And a whole lot of people that I've come to talk to, I could see them deteriorating, for a long time. And so it reminds me of when Yeshua was led to the desert to be tempted. And he said, all these things I will give you if you fall down and worship me. My take on that was all of these things were brought before him, and he didn't find any of those things attractive. And so he didn't be influenced to consume those immoral principles by way of the dark side within him. He chose the light. And this is what the temptation is all about. Temptation implies something that is created to attract you to it. It's not anything that is unattractive, something that is repulsive. It is something that is made attractive to you. However, if you involve yourself in it, the results will be of a repulsive effect. The same as the drink and the drugs and all of those things. And so that's pretty much what the video before this was referring to. But as we are right here in 2025, we're still dealing with all of these attractive things. These things are made attractive. However, a whole lot of things that look good are not necessarily good for you. So when it comes to success, being successful of one's life journey, the root of success is you have to first respect the fact that you are a living human being. You have to respect yourself as a living human being. Then you have to like yourself. You have to like who and what you are. Because when you like who and what you are, you don't feel a necessity to add anything onto it as far as drinking and the character that is propagated in drinking or drugs. And then once you grow to like who and what you are, then you care about yourself. And through your caring about yourself, you won't succumb to the wicked influences of what is mentioned before, the drugs, the alcohol, all of these things that are in the society in which would destroy you if you choose to give in to those things. And then, due to the fact that you have grown to love yourself without becoming a convert unto yourself, which means not walking around thinking that you're better than everyone, and therefore you making yourself a God beside God, but giving all praise and all credit to the Creator for giving you a mind in which you are able to determine what is best for you and what is not best for you, or what is not good for you. You're able to become successful in life when you come to love yourself. But the root of it is respect. You have to respect yourself. Then you have to come to like yourself. Then you have to come to care about how things affect you based upon what you know is is good for you and what could not be good for you. And after you come to care about yourself, then you become to love yourself. And from that, you become successful. So, with all that being said, I just encourage everyone to take your time and observe everything in the environment, and also understand that what is attractive and what is made attractive by outside forces is not necessarily always good for your person. Self-love, self-respect, self-like, self-care, self-love. And understand that the root of all of that is the Creator. So with all of this being said, I know this video was kind of different, but this is pretty much based on my personal video that I chose to pull out. But understand, especially these days, what is attractive is not always good for you. And understand that all of these things was brought before Yeshua. And the whole tempt thing, it implies that whatever is brought before you is not repulsive, but attractive. Made attractive in order to attract you to it. However, as I said before, when you consume these things, and after you consume these things that were made attractive, the results will always be of a repulsive effect. So with that being said, everyone have a good night, and everyone stay human. Pay attention.